What's up, bitches? So I literally just woke up like a few minutes ago. I brushed my teeth and I was like, this is a great time for me to film a video about a complex topic that requires my utmost attention. But I have come to realize in the past 2 minutes that I do not have my utmost attention at this current moment because I am very fucking out of it. I'm still in dreamland right now. I literally just decided what is real. I had a wild ass dream and I literally just figured out what my life is like. Like, you know when you wake up from a dream and you're like, fuck, who am I? I had that moment. And right after I was like, oh yeah, I'm Atlas. Alright, time to film a video about complex topics while I'm still semi out of it. So if I'm a little off this episode, my bad, homie. But today, we're going to talk about a topic that I am kind of passionate about, I guess. And it's drugs. All right. And what drugs are safe to do? Also, just a disclaimer. All right. If you're under 21 or if you don't have medical exemption, don't do any drugs, boys. All right. I, for one, have medical exemption because I have like literally everything that qualifies you for a med card. So I'm allowed to do it while being under 21 because fuck you, I'm better. That's why. All right. But if you don't have any medical exemption or if you're 21, I can't like say do drugs or anything or like you're safe and stuff because legality and stuff. But also like, hey man, I don't know, Stitch. If you wanna do the safe drugs, go for it, man. Go for it. But today I want to talk about the good drugs. There is no bad drug, all right, but there is a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do ever do certain drugs. And there's no good drug, all right? But I'll tell you my reasons of why I find certain drugs safe and why I find certain drugs not safe. And I'll give you experiences and research because, those are cores to why I've come to the conclusions that I've come to. Because a lot of times you're like, I'm smoking a little bit of Zaza right now. And then people that have never done research on the Zaza will come up and be like, you useless druggie. And you're like, man. Because, like, that always gets to me. Because I do extreme research on the drugs that I do. Do. Anyways, I do extreme research on the drugs I do to make sure that they're safe and I'm not putting myself in any actual danger, right? So, and I have a lot of experiences with a bunch of different kinds of drugs. So I form my opinion on them as safely as I possibly can. And these people that have never done drugs and that have never like actually put any research on how drugs affect you go up to and you would be like, you're useless druggie. You are a failure to society. And you're like, man, why? And they're like, because you're doing drugs. And you're like, okay, what's so bad about them? And they're like, it's drugs. And I'm like, what do they even do to you? And they're like, I don't know what they do to you, but I know it's bad. And I'm like, homie, nah. You have not done any research. I have done extensive research to make sure I'm doing okay, and I'm still getting judged. This is fucked up. And plus, like, this shit only affects me, alright? But some of the harder drugs make you act irrationally and will affect other people, alright? But we'll get into that. So, let's start off with one of my favorites, my all-time goes to, Wheaties, the little bit of Zaza, okay? Common misconception. It does affect your lungs a little bit, but from all the research I could tell, it either says that there's not enough evidence to connect smoking to lung cancer, smoking weed, smoking nicotine, a lot of evidence to affect smoking nicotine to lung cancer. But weed, there's no evidence. I've either have had read many articles where it says there's no correlation between smoking or cancer, or there's not enough data. There is not a single article that I found that says 100% if you smoke weed you're gonna get cancer. And I've never met a person that exclusively smokes weed to get like cancer. And I know a lot of people that smoke a lot of weed, right? And if they do get cancer, it's probably like because they're using tobacco as a mixture in their weed, or they smoke nicotine or cigarettes on top of that. Because sometimes people do have lung problems, but it's not exclusively because of the weed. It's because they're either also a nicotine addict or because they mix tobacco in their weed every time they smoke, and that may lead to lung cancer. All right. Now let's talk about my favorite drug, my all-time favorite boy of all time. Oh wait, I didn't even finish talking about weed. Fuck, I'm stupid. All right, I'm not even high. I just woke up and my brain's everywhere. But Wheaties. Another common misconception is memory loss. All right, weed makes you stupid. Okay, there is it for the most part. All right, if you smoke a shit ton of weed, it will affect your memory. All right, it will affect it. But if you do it in moderation, there is no links between memory loss and Wheaties. Right, right. Okay, but this is okay. I'm just giving you a warning. This is like my take on like this. I don't know if there's any actual research about like what I'm saying, but from my experience, smoking weed isn't a direct cause of memory loss, but when you're high, you become dumb, right? So when you're high, you get memory loss. And if you're high 24/7, it's kind of hard to remember stuff cuz people are like, "Oh, stoners are so dumb." And I'm like, "Nah, they're probably just high." Like really, really smart people smoke, but they do it in moderation. So when you talk to them, you're like, this is a smart motherfucker. And they're like, oh yeah, I love weed. And you're like, I would have never guessed. But then you talk to a stoner and you're like, this dude dumb as fuck. But he's probably just baked out of his mind every time you're talking to him. All right. And repeated use gets you in a fucking mindset where you're just like, oh, I'm constantly not doing good with memory because you're constantly stoned. And if you're constantly stoned, that forms habits in your brain that loses memories. But it's not exclusively the weed from my experience. It might be, but you do have to consume a lot of weed in order for it to affect your brain. That much, all right? So my recommendation is if you do want to get into Wheaties, do it in moderation. Also, one of the biggest misconceptions is that Wheaties are a gateway drug, right? Right? There has been many a research to say that Wheaties has helped people get off drugs, helps alleviate stress, and that's why there's med cards, right? It helps with depression, stress, PTSD, but also only PTSD if you do it right. We'll get into that in a second. And anxiety, insomnia, and all that good stuff, all right? So if you're struggling with that, look into getting a med card. But what was I saying? I'm sorry. Um, yeah. So I don't think I assume that Wheaties does not have a direct correlation with memory loss, but repeated use does because it alters like the way you think 24/7. Because if you're used to like nonstop being stupid and just forgetting everything, I think your brain gets into a pattern, you know. But a lot of the times, if you see a smoker that only does that like once at night to help them sleep, or they only do it like on rare occasions, then you'll have no idea that they're even a smoker, and they'll have a great memory and they'll just be thriving because it doesn't get into a pattern where you're constantly not being able to remember things. So for the most part, you can remember stuff. All right. And here's the thing. All right. Is weed an addictive chemical? Because one of the biggest misconceptions about weed is that it's a gateway drug, right? And from my research and from my experiences, weed has helped people get off drugs, right? And it is no way physically addictive. So that means you could go off it for the most part and not have any side effects. It is, however, mentally addictive. So if you can mentally get addicted to stuff really easily, then weed might not be for you. However, most things are mentally addictive. There's motherfuckers that got addicted to fucking eating their dead husband's ashes, all right? And because weed is like good, it is easier to get mentally addicted to than a lot of things. But you could get addicted to like hamburgers and you're like, this shit's busting and I eat a hamburger every day, right? It's just more extreme version of that. So it is mentally addictive, but it's not like the chemicals do not cause you to get physically addicted or cause you to get mentally addicted. This is your own brain taking a substance that is very, very fun and that is very, very good for the most part and getting addicted to it because of how much serotonin it releases, not because of any addictive chemicals in the substance, right? So, um, do okay. So, Wheaties, right? Is it a gateway drug? No, it actually helps people get off drugs and it helps you not be addicted to shit. Because for me, Wheaties has helped me get off alcohol because I was heavily addicted to alcohol and a little bit of shrooms too. But we're gonna talk about that later. All right. I was heavily addicted to alcohol, and when I got stoned, I was like, "Oh, I have no need for this." However, if you are a person that constantly says "fuck it, we ball," and you try Wheaties, it's not gonna lead you to anything physically. You're not gonna have Wheaties and be like, "I need meth now." All right, but going from sobriety to Wheaties kind of makes your mind go like, oh, drugs aren't that bad. So if you go from sobriety and you're kind of scared to have weed, and then you have it, and then you're smoking weed all the time, it loosens you up to the idea of drugs, right? So by itself, weed is not a gateway. But because you're going from sobriety to smoking, you kind of get loosened to the idea of experimenting more and doing more and more hard stuff. So then maybe you take shrooms and you're like, this is really good, you know? And then you get into certain situations where you're at a bar drinking with the homies and they're like, let's do cocaine. You get loosened to that idea. Because normally, people that don't smoke and stuff, a lot of times will go from sobriety and then someone's like, let's do cocaine. And you're like, nah, bruh. Nah, but because you've been loosened to the idea of drugs, you kind of are willing to experiment more. So that is what can lead you to doing harder drugs. And it is nothing within the substance. It is just being loosened to the idea of drugs not being too bad. So then you get into the harder stuff. So if there are cases of weed leading to drug abuse, it is most likely because of that. Or because there's a recovering addict and they start trying weed. And then they're like, oh, I miss drugs. And then weed doesn't do it enough because they were doing heroin or something. So then they go harder, Because of reasons. So if you're a recovering addict, I don't even recommend you trying weed unless I don't know, there's situations where recovering addicts can only use weed, and because they're using weed, they have no need for any other substance. And it depends on the person really, but there's also cases where recovering addicts go from weed and go from sobriety to weed, right? And then they're like, "Oh, this is kind of good. I miss being high." But because weed is not that strong of a substance in comparison to everything else, then you go harder, right? So, a lot of times it can lean you off addictions, but if you're addicted to heavy stuff, a lot of times it can lead to it. But weed by itself is not a gateway drug, and it does not lead you to having other drugs. It's completely dependent on the person. So if you are to try weed for the first time, I want you to know that it is completely up to you, and it will not destroy your life by itself, but your actions and the consequences of weed loosening up your mind to the possibility of other substances may lead to addiction. And I do have to warn you about that. But if you're not an addictive person and you don't think that is to happen, there's no reason why you should do that unless you get into horrible circumstances in which would leads you to addiction. But by itself, for the most part, weed does not have any addictive qualities and all that good shit. Okay, there was one more thing about weed that I was supposed to say, but I wrote down everything about everything about every other drug, but because I'm so well versed in weed, I didn't feel the need to write it down, and now I've gotten to every point I wanted to say except for the last point, and I'm completely blanking on it now. So give me a second. Yes. Okay. So, now let's talk about the bad parts of weed. Alright? For the most part, psychedelics like weed, shroomies, and LSD are all physically really safe. And, safer than most, basically any drug, right? The only bad side effects of weed is it slightly decreases your lung capacity, might lead to memory loss with a bunch of use of it, and whatever the fuck the last thing I said was. It might lead to you being lucid. I would not say that it leads to any drugs, but it makes your mind adapt to the possibility of doing other stuff. All right? Now, the real danger, one of the most dangerous parts of weed, is if you have a lot of mental illness and a lot of anxiety, and if you have anxiety before taking the drug, you're most likely going to have a bad trip or like a bad experience with it. Not really trip, because it's not like you're going to trip balls, you know? Weed's not like that. But if you have a lot of anxiety about doing it, and if you're not comfortable with the possibility of doing weed, I say do not do it. Because a lot of times, if you're in a good mood and you're vibing, weed is just like the best experience. But if you're in a bad mood, there is possibilities for it to relieve it depending on how you are adapted to weed. Like for example, me. Every time I'm in a bad mood, I smoke and I go like, "Ah, life's chill." But I'm a fucking stoner, so like I'm well adapted to weed. But people who are less well adapted to weed, and if they're having anxiety about doing it and anxiety in life in general, then you could smoke and have a really, really bad time and increase your anxiety and start thinking really, really bad shit. You know, you'll start being like, oh, the police are coming after me. Oh, I'm gonna die, and like all that good shit. If you smoke too much while you're in a bad experience mentally, all right. So, if you are to smoke weed, make sure you're doing good mentally. And if you have any hesitations about doing it, especially around like the first, second, third, and fourth time, if you are very new to it and if you have hesitations about doing weed, then please do not do weed. Smoke weed. I sound like a fucking weed virgin. Don't do the weeds, kid. You know? Or do any edibles, especially not edibles. And that's one thing. I always recommend if you are to smoke weed, or no, if you are to do edibles, do not do them for your first time, because edibles are really hard to dose. Because first off, edibles always hit you like weird and harder than most times you smoke. All right, so you have to take really, really low dosages when you're starting. So sometimes people will take like a couple edibles, and because edibles take an hour to 2 hours to kick in for the most part, I don't know why, but like the people that, because like for me, like it takes an hour. Sometimes it takes people 30 minutes. But for some reason, every time you take an edible for the first time, life just wants to say fuck you. So like it takes really, really long for your first time, especially since it's your first time and you're waiting for it to kick in, you know? So it takes really, really long. So one of the biggest mistakes is they'll pop an edible, you know? They'll wait like an hour and a half. And then they'll be like, this edible ain't shit. So then they'll pop another edible. And then right after they pop that shit, it all hits and you're like, oh, fuck, I have another edible to go. And because you're already like, oh, fuck, I'm way too high off this one edible and I just popped another, you're probably going to start getting into a bad mindset. Bad mindset. Why the fuck can I say that? All right. So you're probably going to get into a bad mindset. And when you get into that mindset, the anxiety starts getting worse as a result of weed, and you start having a bad experience with the weed and a bad trip because of it. Or a bad high, not a bad trip. And you get into this bad high, and it's going to get worse when you pop that second edible. So, recommendation, if you are to try weed for the first time, don't ever do edibles, all right? Unless you have a friend that's like really, really safe about it and really, really smart about it, and he's going to be like, or he or she or they or whatever, are going to be like, yo, you already took an edible, just chill out. You don't need it to take anymore, right? Right. Hello, this is editing me. I'm from the future. Sorry for that. But I just did notice that I left out one point about weed that I was meaning to get to, but I just never got to in the video. But weed helps with a lot of mental issues, and it helps with a lot of depression and other physical issues too. Like it helps alleviate pain and all that good stuff. And something that happened to me, and I know has happened to a lot of people with weed that is kind of bad, is I have an eating disorder, and a lot of my friends have eating disorders. And weed helps with eating disorders. It helps a lot. And it helps you eat because, you know, you get munchies on weed, and you're just like, I just want to fucking eat, bro. But a bad thing that can happen is if you become dependent on weed and become dependent on only eating when you're high. You lose the ability to eat when you're not high, and food becomes worse, and it just seems worse, and you lose motivation to eat when you are not high. So if you do develop a dependency on weed, especially because of eating disorder reasons, it can lead to you just physically not being able to eat anything when you're not intoxicated. So I do warn you against that. But for the most part, it can help with eating disorders and it can help lean you onto food. Just try not to get too dependent on it to help with the eating disorder. If you have an eating disorder, try to make sure like you're using it in moderation to add to your food consumption, to make sure you're eating more food but not being completely dependent on it. Try to like eat while you're sober too, because the mistake I did was I only ate while I was high. So when I ran out of weed, I just wouldn't eat because it was not the same. So it can help with eating disorders and it can help with insomnia. Same thing for applies to insomnia. A lot of times it does help you with insomnia and it helps you sleep more, but you can become dependent on it. Can't sleep without it. Same with depression. Like a lot of times it helps you become happier and clears your mind, but sometimes you become dependent on it and you don't feel the same when you're not high. So I do warn you against that, and I warn you about the dangers with that. But also it can help with all these things and can help you overcome depression, insomnia, and eating disorders. But if you do it in an unhealthy way, like I have done it, and if you do it in an unhealthy way, like a lot of my friends have done it, it can make it worse. So that is just a warning, and I'll continue letting past me talk, or present me. I don't know. Is this future? Am I future me or am I present me? Who knows? See ya. Now let's move on to a different substance because I've been talking about weed for a lot. Let's move on to my favorite substance, shroomies. All right, shroomies are my all-time favorite substance, and they are the physically safest substance. All right, but mixed as a result, or fuck words, shroomies and LSD are weird because physically they're really safe if you get them from a reliable source. All right, don't get shroomies for the most part, like you could get from anyone and you'll be pretty fine. But because LSD is a man-made substance, you have to get them from a really, really reliable source. And if you get street LSD, they could make that fucked up. And for the most part, it's getting safer and safer, the street LSD. But because it's a man-made substance, it's because it's not something you grow or like, however else you do drugs, it can like modify, and if you take street LSD, it can fuck with you, alright? Because like, since it's a man-made substance, you would have to get it from a reliable source who knows how to make LSD, right? But shroomies, they're all natural and they're great, so for the most part, you can buy them from anyone, and you'll be fine, right? And they're one of the physically safest drugs. My experience with the shroomies. Okay, because like normally, from the most research I've done, like they only warn you about the mental side effects, and for the most part, they're like, yeah, there's no physical side effects. But if you take a lot of shroomies, your stomach will feel very empty, and you will not be able to eat for the most part. If you take a lot, if you take a little, I enjoy it. Like if you take just a tiny bit of shroomies, I really enjoy eating. I'll fucking nom on some shroomies. But if you take a lot, for the most part, your stomach will feel really empty, and you will not be able to eat. And it's a very minor side effect, but if you do take a lot, you will feel like you're going to throw up a lot, and you might throw up, all right? So just a warning, there's a little bit of throw up involved with the shroomies, but for the most part, it is really safe, and there's no physical side effects. And from all of the research I've done, shroomies are the safest drug physically. However, mentally, it's like weed, but times a fucking 100. If you get into a bad trip, you will see fucking demons. You will go to the gates of hell itself and die over and over again until you fucking cry yourself to sleep. But then the sleep paralysis demon will chase you, right? So, like, if you are having any hesitation about doing shroomies, do not do them. And it is very easy to induce a bad trip. So that is why whenever you do shroomies, you have to have it being moderated by a sober person, your trip partner. And I recommend, hey, this is not needed because, like, basically, when you do shroomies, basically you just need a sober person there to make sure you're safe. But it's a lot more fun when you also have a really, really high person there tripping balls with you, and you're just both like, holy fuck, I'm seeing colors, I'm seeing it as the cosmos, holy shit, the stars are coming for me, and they're just like, oh, fuck, this is dope, dude, and you're like, yeah, and then you're like, look at my pupils, and you're like, there's no iris in your eyes, there's no color, it's just complete pupils, and they're like, holy fuck, dude, they're like, are you good, am I good, do I look good, am I like you, and you're like, buddy, you know what I mean? So, My recommendation, if you're having any anxiety about doing shroomies and any second thoughts, please do not do them because it is very easy to induce a bad trip, right? And that shit could go south real fast, and you could have, like, you could be completely healthy, and if you have a bad trip, it can go from, like, being healthy to having panic attacks and anxiety, and it will increase your anxiety, and it will increase your depression, and it will increase your possibility for panic attacks. However, oops, I dropped my pen. Um, However, if you have a good trip, and sometimes you reach the peak of nirvana. But just a warning: this isn't going to happen every time, and it doesn't matter on the dosage. It matters on the person, right? So. Most of the time, if you take a high dosage, you'll be able to see colors and stuff like that, and it'd be like, whoa, life's fucking pretty, and you'll have a lovely time. You'll feel really good. It just increases your mood, and you're like, fuck yeah, I love life. And it increases your confidence a lot, which I appreciate. But dependent on the person, you can get this thing we like to call an ego death or mental clarity. And for me, that has done wonders because I don't want to like oversell it because then again, because shroomies has been so taboo, there's not too much research on it, like other drugs. So we do not know too much about it. So I can't tell you for certain that it's I could tell you for certain it's physically safe, but I can't tell you for certain to do it. But a lot of times, um, you'll reach a state of ego death, and for me, at least, it has helped me tremendously. Like, I had a lot of bad shit happen to me as a kid. Trigger warning, I guess. I'm not even gonna get into it, so just we're already fine. But I have a lot of bad shit that happened to me as a kid, and the shroomies kind of gave me clarity of like looking at things objectively and being like, there's a lot of bad shit that happened to you, but you could use all that pain to relate to others, and you could use all this pain and sadness, and you could look at it from an objective point of view. And if you can learn from this, that means that all of that pain is not for nothing. You shouldn't have ever had any of that happen to you because that's fucked and it shouldn't happen to anyone. But I got the mental clarity to look at it objectively and use it to learn from it. And I decided, because of all of the pain I went through and because of all that shit I went through, I have been able to be blessed with the opportunity to help a lot of other people, right? So I'm able to relate to a lot of other people, and I'm able to look at things with kindness because a lot of times it's hard to help someone if you don't know what they're going through, you know? Because you're like, oh, I feel bad for you, you know? And then they're like, thanks, buddy. Really appreciate that. And it's like, kind of like, who cares, man? I don't care that you're feeling bad for me. Something really bad happened to me, and you don't know how to comprehend it. But if something really bad happens to you and your homie's like, yeah, I get it. I'm really sorry. If you want, these things helped me, and maybe they'll help you. And if not, it's okay, buddy. I'll be here for you. That really speaks to people. And because I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of things, I've been able to do that with a lot of things, and I've been able to relate to a lot of people. And that shit really fucked me up. But being able to help others with my pain has realized that just because I went through all that shit for nothing doesn't mean I have to make nothing out of it. You know what I mean? I could use that to help many, many people, and that is my goal. And that is like why I started YouTube and why I want to be like um, do writing and music and stuff like that, because I want to show other people, hey, shit's gonna be okay. And it gave me mental clarity to look at things objectively, and I've healed from it. And there's been many, many studies that weed, LSD, Molly, and shroomies have all helped people with PTSD. Um, in some cases, if you take it wrong and you have a really bad environment around you and a really bad mindset, it can make the PTSD worse and it can make everything worse. But as long as you take it in a safe circumstance, and if you take it safely, and if you have like people there to help you and make sure everything's chill, it can help you with mental health. It can help you with depression, PTSD, and anxiety. So it's really nice because that shit affected me for a really, really long time. And it helped me just think of things objectively and get over all the really, really bad shit that happened to me as a kid and was happening to me in my early adult life. So I think it's a beautiful substance, but take it with precaution because it can lead to a lot of bad things. But for me, it has led to me actually being able to be on my happiness arc, you know? I don't know why, but after that trip, like, there was something deep in my soul. Like, I can't explain it, but even looking back, I don't think it was just the drugs. Like, there was something deep in my soul that told me, like, I've never been so certain about anything in my life. Like, if you told me 1 plus 1 equals 2, I would still be more hesitant than what I was feeling in that moment. Like, with absolute fucking certainty, with no shadow of a doubt in my fucking mind, I just felt like life was gonna be okay, you know? And that was really beautiful. And I don't know if it was just like um my mind being on drugs or if it was like really like the universe being like, "Hey buddy, it's going to be okay." That's exactly what I needed in the moment. It felt like the universe was just giving me a hug and I felt just connected to the universe. And after that, like even when I sobered up and I was like, that's a weird thing to happen to me. I thought I was one with the universe. Like I don't know about that. But me being so certain that everything was going to be okay, even if it is just my mind tripping balls, that gave me so much comfort and so much hope for the future. So for the first time, I actually felt like I've been happy for more than a month. You know, I actually felt like life was going to be okay. Because it's hard to think life is going to be okay when you're going through such shitty stuff, you know? But I was just absolutely certain that, like, I'm going to make it out of this and I could do great stuff because my life was not okay. And that was really beautiful. And like, even if it was me just tripping balls on shrooms, I think that's exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. And it gave me so much mental clarity, and it gave me so much hope for the future. And it just started my happiness arc, and it started myself with my self-love arc. I like, something that I thought was really beautiful was I've struggled with self-love. Like, like, for the most part, um, most of my life I was like, I hate my nose, I hate my smile, I hate my hair, I hate just like everything about me. But for some odd reason, when I took that ego death trip, I sat down, I felt my face, I started meditating and I was feeling my face. And I got sent into the heavens. And it was like I was on a character select screen. They were like, do you want any different hair? And I was like, no, I kind of think my hair's perfect, not gonna lie. And then, or like, it represents me as a person. It's not perfect. It's a fucking mess, obviously. But I was like, I think if I could choose any hair, I would choose this. If I could choose any face, I would choose this. And if I could choose any past, I would choose this, which was a big thing for me to say. It was a really big thing for me to say because I had a really, really fucked up past. And I was absolutely certain in that moment this was the life I was meant to live. I was meant to live in this body, and I was meant to go through that. And because I went through that, I've become who I am today. And I've become a better person because I've healed from that. And I've become who I am today, and I've helped a lot of people because I went through that. So for the first time in my life ever that I could recall, I was like, if I could choose any life to live and if I could choose any past to have, I would choose this one. And that was really beautiful to me. And I don't know if it was just me tripping balls, but that brought me so much mental clarity and so much hope for the future even after I was done tripping balls, you know? And that was really beautiful for me. And that started my self-love journey. And there was something about that trip that, like, with absolute confidence, I said that I would choose this life without a shadow of a fucking doubt. If I could be any person, have any personality, and have any past, I would choose this one with absolute fucking confidence. Now, like, if I actually got that choice, I would probably make myself a lot more handsome. I would, like, probably give myself extra 2 inches or something, you know, all that good stuff. But for the most part, being so certain about, like, everything I went through and being so certain about this being the life I was meant to live, it was really beautiful to me, you know? It was really, really beautiful to me. And that just started myself on a journey of self-love. And I do not have too much. Moving on to a different substance, unless I forgot something and like I remember it halfway through my like LSD review. I'll probably move on because I think I said what all I want to say with shroomies, and I do not have too much experience with LSD. Um, so I cannot say anything for certain, but for the most part, it's like shroomies, but like I from what I've heard, more intense and stuff, and there's a lot more visual aspects. Um, I feel like shroomies, I always get like a sense of confidence and mental clarity and stuff like that, where LSD is more visual. But then again, I don't have too much experience with it, so I can't say for certain because I usually like doing a lot before I like make a before I make a absolute judgment on my view of drugs. But from my experience, dope as fuck, gives you that mental clarity, gives you a lot of ego death if you take it right. You know, same thing with shrooms. Bad environment will lead to bad trips. A lot of insecurities, anxieties, bad trips. Um, but the thing that that makes me like shroomies more, and the thing that's very hesitant for me is that it is a man-made substance, and because like I'm broke, and for the most part, when I tried this stuff, I was a kid. Um, you don't get the top quality. You get the bottom of the barrel, and because it's a man-made substance, the bottom of the barrel is worse than a shrooms at the bottom of the barrel. So I don't have too many good experience or too many amazing experiences because I probably took the worst shit imaginable. But my recommendation is because it's a man-made drug, make sure it's safe, make sure it's good, make sure like it's from a trustworthy source. If you are to try it, I can't recommend trying it or not because that is up to you. If you're a kid, don't fucking try it, all right? But if you're an adult, you're free to make your own decisions. So I'm not gonna say do it or don't do it, but if you were to do it, make sure it's from a reliable source and make sure you're chilling, right? Um, but then again, it is a man-made drug, so I do trust it less, but a lot of people trust it more than shrooms because of their experiences. So I'm not to say this is better than shrooms or worse than shrooms, but I'm to say, like, be a little bit hesitant with it. That's my recommendation, right? Now, the last psychedelic I want to talk about is Molly. Um, there are overdoses. There are cases of overdoses, but it is very rare. But it does happen. Um, and I was watching a video on how a lot of people use Molly to help with PTSD and all that good stuff. But I am very hesitant about like even saying you should ever try Molly, cause it is good like any other psychedelic to to help with depression, PTSD, and stuff like that. And there are a lot of studies that say that they help with depression, PTSD, and stuff like that. But um, Molly is a lot more addictive than the other drugs, and it is stronger than the other drugs I have talked about. And it can lead to overdoses that are rare and can lead to death. You have to take a shit ton of Molly, but it can lead to death. Hypothetically, and it's very rare, but it's possible. It can lead to faintness, panic attacks, and loss of consciousness and seizures. Seizures are like very scary, so don't have them. But like the other two substances, the other two heavy psychedelic substances, or I guess all three. Weed can lead to that too, but I just forgot because I don't ever have those. And it's not that as big of a deal as if you have a really bad trip with shroomies or LSD. Like weed, like it can make you hesitant, but for the most part, like you're done with it and you're like, all right, I'm chilling now. That was just a really bad experience, but I'm chilling now. Where LSD and shroomies can like actually like alter your mind to make you have more anxiety and shit like that. So be hesitant with that. But it's like this, but on crack. All right. And another thing is, there are withdrawals. A lot of times, if you take too much Molly or MDMA, whatever you want to call it, when you wake up, and you're like done with the trip, it will feel like there's no serotonin in your brain, and that can lead to self-destructive behaviors. Because like you wake up and there's no serotonin in your brain, and because you put all the serotonin in your brain real fast, because Molly makes it so there's increased serotonin, increased pleasure, and all that good stuff, but it's really increased. So like there's just a shit ton of serotonin all the time, and then you wake up and there's none. All right, there's just absolutely none, and you feel like absolutely fucking hollow inside, and you feel like you want to die because there's just no serotonin going to your brain, and it's like you have nothing up there, and there's like just heavy depression falls over you if you take too much. Um, so this one, there's a lot of people that are like, this can help with PTSD and depression and stuff. But I am very hesitant on trying it myself. And I don't think I would ever recommend it to anyone else because of the lack of serotonin that you receive if you take too much. And because it causes seizures and overdoses and maybe even death. And because the mental effects are way higher than shroomies and LSD and especially weed. So I say that I don't think this is worth trying, but if you do, take it in a low dosage, don't take too much, make sure you're in a very good setting, make sure you're in a very good mental space, and make sure like everything's good, right? And please don't take too much because that's fucked up. Now let's get... Okay. First off, I was gonna get into the drugs that I say no, never do, no matter what, but let's talk about alcohol. All right, alcohol's a weird drug, and it is a drug because fuck you, it's a type 3 depressant, or yeah, it's a type 3 depressant. So, a lot of people, I find this funky. I'll be smoking my little weedies, and they'll be like, "Fuck you, you useless druggie," and they'll just take a shot of bourbon. I'm like, buddy. You're drinking bourbon while you're saying I'm a useless druggie. That's objectively a higher, like, I think weed's type 2 or something. Alcohol's type 3, up there with fucking cocaine and meth and heroin. But it is a socialized drug, and for the most part, it's like the safest type 3 drug. But I'm gonna admit this. I do have a little bit of a bias towards alcohol because I was addicted to it for a while, and it did ruin my life for a good minute. So I'm very hesitant to say do drink alcohol, boys. But like obviously, since it's legal and since it's such a socialized drug, I'm not gonna stop you, man. But a lot of people don't know how bad it can get. It is very addictive. It has, when you consume enough, it increases your it causes high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, liver disease, digestive problems. It can cause cancer of the mouth, throat, breast, and, does that say voice? I don't think, oh, what? Oh, yeah, voice box. And then it could also cause cancer in the liver, colon, and rectum. It weakens your immune system, and learning problems and memory problems may occur as a result of alcohol. And it makes all of your shit inflated, and it can cause you a little beer belly, a little bit of a beer belly, because all of your shit's inflated. All of your internal organs get inflated because of it, and if you consume too much, it causes a beer belly. And like any drug, really, if you do it in moderation, it's fine, you know? If you are able to control it, it's fine. But I hesitate to say you should drink because it is highly addictive and it can ruin your life if you do get addicted to it. But obviously, for the most part, not a lot of people get too addicted to it. So for the most part, like most people can just drink with friends and be fine. Or they could go to college frat parties and be fine. But it is a heavy substance and it can alter your moods, and that's why there's stereotypes of like people going home and like being really mean to their wife because they're just drunk and they're like, fuck you, you didn't clean the dishes, bam, you know, shit like that. And it does cause a lot of physical health problems if you consume too much. But obviously, if you're at a fucking college party and you want to get turned with the homies, get turned with the homies, man. Just try not to be too reliant on it because it can ruin your life. So if you do, take it in moderation and make sure, like, to be safe about it, right? So I say you can do it if you want, but I would be hesitant on how much you take and how often you do it, because if you start getting to the point where you're just doing it by yourself just because you're sad or something, that's when you're like, I need to stop, all right? And that's when you actually need to stop, because alcoholics can get really, really fucked more than any people that are like taking the drugs I listed previously, except for maybe MDMA, because you could have one experience with, well, okay. You could get alcohol poisoning, but it takes a lot. You know, I've gotten alcohol poisoning before, and it's fucked. But MDMA is easier to be like, let's take a shit ton of this and then get an overdose. So maybe like, I don't know. You know, there's no good or bad drug. So if you want to do that and not MDMA, go for it, man. I'm not stopping you. I don't care which is worse. I'm just listing the side effects so you can make your own decisions. All right. So I do say hesitate on alcohol because it is highly addictive and it can ruin your life, but also because it's so socialized, and because, like, for the most part, a lot of people don't struggle with alcohol addiction. You can make your own choices, right? Like, I'm just telling you the side effects so you can make your own educated decision. Because I feel like I wanted to make this video because not a lot of people actually talk about the objective things, and they're just like, you fucking druggie. And I'm like, no, here are the objective reasons why you should take this and why you shouldn't take it. Or not objectively why you should take it, but the benefits of it and the side effects of it. And so you can make your own decisions. Because I'm not going to say do it or don't do it, but I'm going to say, hey, this is what happens to you if you do it. All right? So it's up to you to decide. So if you want to continue drinking, have fun. Just try not to get addicted to it, because that shit gets fucked. But if you wanted to get turned with the homies, get turned with the... Hey, man, I love getting turned with the homies, but I just don't do alcohol anymore because I had such a bad addiction. So, like, if you want to do that, go for it. But I'm just saying for myself, I'm not going to do it because I was very addicted to it. Now, let's move on to one of my least favorite drugs, cocaine, okay? Cocaine is a weird drug because on the surface, it doesn't seem too bad. Like, it's very socialized, obviously not as socialized as weed or alcohol, but for the most part, a lot of people do it, and a lot of times you'll go drinking with the friends, and then they'll be like, just do a little cocaine, you know? And because cocaine pairs really well with drinking, but I don't really understand why people do it. Because, like, maybe it's because I'm a really, really heavyweight with drinking, because, like, I was a really, really heavyweight. I would, like, down a bottle of vodka and, like, half another vodka to get me, like, really fucked up. Like, a bottle and a half of vodka. That's what, like, got me, like, blackout. Where other people would have, like, 3 White Claws and be like, I'm fucking blackout, bro. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? You know? So a lot of times, when you get to that stage, people are like, just snort a line, and then you could drink more, you know, because it counteracts the things of alcohol. So if you're at a party, you could drink more. But I think that's why I don't like it, because I don't really like the taste of... It was weird. I was an alcoholic, and I still didn't like the taste of alcohol. I was like, this tastes like shit. So, like, people would be like, do cocaine, and I'd be like, nah. I'm good, because, like, I had to drink a bottle and a half of vodka to get here. I'm not wasting that bottle and a half. I don't want to drink anymore, homie. I'm just going to stop right now. But it is a socialized drug because it counteracts the effects of drinking. So if you are to drink, like, you take a line, and then you're like, now we could drink more and have a fucking party. And that is how a lot of people start getting into it, and that's how a lot of people get addicted to it. And it's also a very dangerous drug because, for the most part, it's really cheap at first, right? It is one of the most expensive drugs when you get addicted to it. But at first, you're like, oh, I could get a gram for like $5? Holy shit. Obviously, I want that. It's so cheap. Like, it's just $5, you know? And then you're like, oh, it was just $5. Let's get some more. And the fucked up thing about cocaine is withdrawals and addiction and overdoses are so fucked with cocaine. So you get that high, and you're like, okay, I need more. And another fucked up thing is cocaine only lasts for 15 to 30 minutes. So you're like, it's $5, right? But it only lasts for 15 to 30 minutes. So after your 30 minutes are up, you're like, okay, gotta get $5 more. And then you continue that cycle. Like, okay, it's just $5. I'll do it, and then but it only lasts 15 to 30 minutes. So that's like $5 to $10, depending on how your tolerance is, for like 15 to 30 minute high. And because you're partying with the homies, you can't just be high for 15 minutes. You gotta re-up and re-up and re-up. And then you start being like, I kind of like cocaine. Let's get it. And then your tolerance gets higher and higher. So instead of like spending $5 for 15 minutes of high, you spend like $30 because you need to do a lot more lines to get the same amount of high. And then that's when your bank account goes, because you have to re-up and re-up and re-up. And that shit's fucked. And overdoses and withdrawals on cocaine are fucked. And with the heavier drugs like alcohol, cocaine, meth, and heroin, it starts feeling really good at first, but then after a while, it starts losing its effect. So you have to do more and more and more and more. And with shroomies, LSD, and I don't know too much about Molly. It's not physically addictive, and it has this thing where you can take the same amount to get basically the same amount of high. But then again, shroomies and LSD does vary with the high. Like sometimes you'll take 5 grams and you'll be like, I could kind of see colors, and sometimes you'll take 5 grams and you'll be like, I'm seeing God. So it varies, but for the most part, you don't have to increase the dosage to get the same amount of high. But with the harder drugs, you take like a little bit at first and you get very high, and then you take a lot at the end and you get not high. All right. And a lot of people that are addicted to these substances say after a while, they're not even getting high to get high anymore. They're just getting high to feel normal. Because when you're not high, you feel like shit. You feel like absolute shit. And then when you are high, you feel like shit, but just less shit. Like it gets to a point where you get high just to feel normal, right? Because you're scared of overdoses and the withdrawals are fucked. Or not, you're not scared of overdoses. You're scared of withdrawals, and it's really fucked. And like the thought of withdrawals is really fucked. And when you're not high, you feel like absolute shit. And then you take a line and you still feel like shit, but just a lot less. You're just scared of the withdrawals, and you're scared of just like feeling like absolute shit. So after a while, it doesn't even become fun, and you start doing cocaine not to feel high, but to feel normal. And then after a while, you start doing the cocaine just to feel less like shit. Like you feel like real shit, and then you take a line and you still feel like shit, but just less so. Another problem with cocaine is the overdoses are fucked, but for the most part, you can't die from an overdose. But what you can die from is a heart attack. See, the thing with cocaine is when you do it, increases your blood pressure, and it increases your heart rate. And I've never had a homie die from an overdose, but I've had a couple get really, really close of dying from cocaine because their heart rate increases to the point where they have a heart attack. And I've had many of my friends have heart attacks. Luckily, I don't think any of them have died from cocaine. There might be a few that have died, and I just didn't know it was from a cocaine overdose or something. But I've watched a lot of my friends have heart attacks as a result of cocaine, and physically, like, you can't die from solely a cocaine overdose, but if you do get into a point where you're doing a lot of cocaine, it increases your heart pressure a lot, or I'm pretty sure you can't die. You might be able to, but I might just, like, be stupid. But it increases your heart pressure to the point where you will have a heart attack, and that does have a high possibility of death. Also, when you do overdose, I don't think you can die. I'm not entirely sure about that, but you can have permanent brain damage as a result of an overdose, especially if you do it before the age of 25. You can receive an HIV infection, you can receive mood disorders, and get very irritated very fast. So that's why a lot of people with cocaine get a lot of anger issues and have a lot of mood disorders. You can have irritation problems, cardiovascular disease. What the fuck did I say? You can have respiratory illness. I'm sorry, my writing is so fucking bad. You could have gastrointestinal disease, seizures. The seizures on cocaine get fucked, so don't ever do that. You can have weight loss, which might be like, oh, let's get some weight loss, but no. cocaine makes it so you can't really eat and you can't really sleep. So it's not a good kind of weight loss. If you're like, cocaine, I'm gonna do cocaine to lose 100 pounds, you will do it, but because of how much weight you're losing and because of how poorly of a way to lose weight, it will cause you to be very, very ill, and you'll feel sick all the time, especially if you lose a lot of weight. Um, so conceptually, it's cool being like, I want to lose 100 pounds, but no, it will fuck up your life more than just not doing that. It will fuck up your life so much, and the weight loss can cause very, very sickness, and it will also make it so you cannot sleep. With cocaine, like, it keeps you up and it keeps you awake. So if you're constantly doing cocaine, you're not going to sleep, and that can really, really fuck with your health, and it can give you insomnia even after you stop doing cocaine, because you're used to not having a good sleeping pattern, and when your body gets used to it, it's really hard to get used to being in a good sleeping pattern. So it will fuck up your sleep problems, and it will cause you to be very, very sick and very, very ill. So I don't recommend doing this, but it also can cause, sorry, I lost my place. Insomnia, memory loss, short attention span, nosebleeds, and it does have severe overdoses. Um, so a lot of times people get really, really fucked up. They get angry. They have a severe memory loss and very, very short attention span, and they need to be like stimulated all the time. They have to be like, I need to do something. I need to do something, and that can get really fucked and lead to a lot of dangerous behaviors, especially in combination with the anger problems you will receive and the mood swings you will receive while on cocaine. Now, let's talk about one of my least favorite drugs, meth. The thing about meth is, like, a lot of times it alters your mind to the point where, like, you start getting, like, meth teeth and shit like that. And for the most part, I'm pretty sure meth users, like, their skin looks like shit, they get meth teeth and all that fun shit. And it is not a direct result of meth, I'm pretty sure. Not entirely certain, but I know, like, meth fucks with your teeth, but if you brush them, you're kind of chilling. It still, like, fucks with your teeth more than any sugar. But the reason they get to that point is meth increase your mood so much that you will just do nothing except for, like, jack off all day. So a lot of times you do not get, like, that solely because of meth, but you will get like that because meth makes it so your brain is so fucked up that you will refuse to take care of yourself. And because you're high on meth all the time, you will refuse to take care of yourself and refuse to do things like eat, sleep, or not jack off constantly, which has its own side effects. You know, if you want to jack off, but, like, don't do it like meth users do it, because that shit's fucked. But if you want to do it, like, once a day, go for it, homie. That shit feels great. um, but yeah, increases agitation a lot. You think cocaine users are angry? Wait until you see a meth head. They get really fucked, and they get really, really paranoid, and they get, like, really, really angry all the time, and it gets really scary. And that's why I say don't do meth, and that's why I say don't do cocaine. 'Cause for the most part, I don't care if you do meth and cocaine. Like, obviously I would like you to be, like, not addicted to dangerous substances, but ultimately my rule is you can do whatever the fuck you want as long as it doesn't affect others. And the thing with meth and cocaine is it's really hard to not affect others because you're in a altered state of mind for a really long time, and it fucks up your mind and increases your agitation and stuff. So, like, if you want to drink alcohol, do it for the most part, because, like, for the most part you're not gonna fuck with too many people as long as you do it in moderation. You know, obviously, if you do it for a long time and you get heavily addicted, it will increase your aggression and will, like, fuck with you. That's why I say it's up to you to do Molly, because for the most part you won't really fuck with anyone else. It's good to do shrooms, it's good to do weed and stuff, because you won't fuck with anyone else. But with meth and with cocaine, it's really hard to not affect people's lives because you're angry all the time and you act irrationally. So that's why I say, hey, please don't do that, because it's not going to only affect you, it's going to affect the lives of everyone around you. Ooh, and the thing with alcohol, cocaine, and meth is they all really fuck with your wallets. You will be bankrupt for the entire time you were addicted to these substances. So yeah, you'll get really angry and get really broke real quick, which will cause more anger problems. You will develop psychosis if you do it too much, chest pain, difficulty breathing, paranoia, weak immune system, trouble sleeping, and all that good stuff. And for the most part, that doesn't sound like too much compared to like what else I said, but you will have an inability to take care of yourself, and meth is really one of the most addictive substances, and it is really fucked up because it's like cocaine, but like more. It's more. Like, it's like cocaine, but like on cocaine. No, it's cocaine on crack, alright? But yeah. And then there's heroin. I didn't even write anything down because heroin is such a fucked up substance that no matter what, I'm just like, just don't fucking do it. Heroin ruins people's lives. It is so addictive and it will ruin your life so fast. And one of the really sad facts is after your first dose, like there is a 20% chance that you will be addicted after your first dose. And another really fucked up fact about heroin that I don't like is the average lifespan of a heroin user after their first dose, that your average lifespan if you were to get addicted to it is 2 years. So heroin addicts have at most on average, heroin addicts live for 2 years after your first dose. And that is a really, really scary thought. And I don't like that. But let's talk about something I like even less. Alright? So, something about life, alright? Something I've come to learn is a lot of people are really fucked up, alright? For example, in Russia, they have the highest aristocrats control the world, but they also have control over the alcohol industry. And something about drugs is a lot of times people resort to drugs as a sense of hopelessness and a sense of disparity. When your life gets really bad, it's really easy to turn to drugs, right? And the fucked up thing about the cartel and also the aristocrats of Russia is they make life worse for you, so you're more likely to get addicted to drugs. They will purposely make you poorer and poorer and make life more hopeless and hopeless because they have a monopoly on the alcohol industry for Russia and the cocaine industry for the cartel. So they will purposely cause wars, they will purposely cause hopelessness, and they will purposely cause poverty in order for you to be easily addicted to these substances, right? So, like, if you're in Russia, they will purposely make your life worse so you could get addicted to alcohol. And a lot of people see that and they're like, chill. You know, we already know that, like, stuff over there is fucked, you know? We know that that's happening, but that won't happen in the USA. And it does. It does happen in the USA. It happens with opiates. And that is why, in competition with the alcohol industry years and years ago, and now in competition with the opiate industry, weed has gotten banned because there's a lot of propaganda in order to make sure people don't consume weed, because weed helps you lean off substances, and also if you do have weed, it makes it so you don't really feel like you should do any other substances. And another fucked up thing is it's in competition with the other substances. Like, if you're smoking weed, you're probably not drinking alcohol or doing opiates, you know? So there's competition between there. So a lot of so in the past, America made propaganda against weed to make it seem like it's worse than it was. For a long time, weed was considered to be a type 3 substance, which goes along the ranks of meth, heroin, and cocaine. Weed was considered to be as bad, if not worse, as cocaine, and as bad as meth, and as bad as heroin. And obviously that's not fucking true. And another fucked up fact is weed was just considered as weed and cannabis, but in the propaganda to make weed seem worse than it is, they changed the name to marijuana. So they started saying oh, marijuana, for the sole purpose that people are fucking racist, and marijuana seems more foreign than weed and cannabis. So they were like, let's make it seem more foreign to make it seem more scary, so fucking Americans will be like, yeah, fuck this drug. Um, and a lot of that propaganda leaks over to this generation. So there's a lot of research and a lot of like new thinking to be like, hey, we're chilling, but because of all that propaganda, people like a lot of times people my age will have parents that are like gonna kill you if you have weed, and they'll be like, oh my god, you're the worst person to ever exist, you're smoking weed. And we know, for example, that like weed's not that bad, you know, it's chilling, it's legal for a reason now, but they're still in the mindset that it is as addictive as cocaine, it is a gateway drug, it is gonna ruin your life, and it is like you'll become codependent on it after your first hit of weed or whatever. And that is obviously not true, but they still fall under all of the propaganda that was used to outlaw weed. So it gets really fucked for us because we're like, no, trust me, I'm chilling. I'm chilling. I'm not addicted to this substance. I like do it in moderation, but they don't think it's physically possible to do it in moderation, or they think even if you do it in moderation, you'll fall into addiction. Whatever. So there's a lot of propaganda that has come with weed and why you shouldn't do it, even though for the most part, I'm sorry, it's really safe. So that's kind of fucked. But one of the biggest competitors with weed is opiates, and a while back, weed was prescribed for medical purposes. Like if you have like insomnia or something, the doctors would just be like, have some weed, bro. Have some weed. Chill the fuck out. Just have a great time. But now, because opiates have become so popular and because they're so addictive, we replaced weed with opiates. And the fucked up thing about opiates is like, instead of weed, we prescribe opiates now, and like chemicals to help with depression, or like really addictive drugs to help with depression, really addictive drugs to help with anxiety, stuff like that. And we leaned off weed to have more addictive drugs because addictive drugs are more expensive and they're more likely to get addicted. Because obviously we know at this point weed is not physically addictive, and you cannot get addicted to weed for the most part unless you're a mentally addictive person. So they want to make money. So instead of prescribing weed, they started prescribing opiates, which is really, really addictive. And it's fucked up. And then they started prescribing a lot of other things that are really easy to get addictive and that are very, very dangerous to you, and that can lead to addiction, health problems, overdoses, withdrawals, all that fun shit. But those drugs are expensive, and those drugs are addictive. So even after you're done healing, even after, like, if you get in a medical accident, like if you get in a car crash and you need opiates for a while, you'll still come back from the opiates because you're addicted. And that makes them a lot more money. Where if you, like, get weed, you'll probably be like, I want to smoke more weed, but it's not going to be as much money. And the really, really fucked up thing about opiate addiction is one of the main reasons for heroin addiction is because of medical emergencies. A lot of times we look at heroin addicts and we're like, or for the most part, people that are uneducated look at heroin addicts and they're like, you did this to yourself. You're a worthless motherfucker. You're just doing heroin for your own selfish gain. And then you just see them as lazy people that did this to themselves. And they were always druggies. They were always meant to be down this path. But a lot of the time, that's not the case. A lot of the time, you can be a perfectly healthy member of society. For example, my uncle was addicted to heroin, and he was a perfectly good member of society. He had his job, worked a 9 to 5, had a family, all that good stuff, and he was considered the good kid out of my dad's side's like 3 brothers, I think. He was considered like the productive one that's always good, always on task. But then he got into a car accident and had heavy brain trauma. And then he got addicted to opiates. And after a while, opiates are really, really expensive. So you're like, how the fuck am I supposed to pay for all these opiates? And then you discover this magical substance called heroin, which is much, much cheaper than opiates and much, much stronger. It gets you way higher for way cheaper, and it gets you very, very high. So one of the most common problems is You get into a medical accident, you get addicted to opiates, and now you're a heroin addict because it's cheaper and it's stronger. And it also is like that for other substances like meth and coke and whatever. But the most common one is heroin. And I think that's really fucked up because our need for money and our need to like our lack of respect for other people's like physical safety in order to get us money has caused the heroin addiction for the most part. Like obviously there's still going to be heroin addicts even if there wasn't medical trauma. But because we've like leaned people off safer substances for the sake of money, there has been a severe increase in heroin addiction. And that's one of the most fucked up things because heroin is one of the most fucked up drugs. So I don't like that. But yeah, there's probably more drugs I'm forgetting about that I could talk about. Oh yeah, whippets. They lean. I've done a few share of whippets. I don't like them. They only last for like 30 seconds, so you have to re-up on them all the time. They're like not that expensive, but because they only last for 30 seconds, or at least mine only lasted for 30 seconds, you have to re-up all the time, and it makes you very, very dumb. It slowly kills your brain cells. So like you'll feel fine for a hot minute, but because they only last for 30 seconds, you have to do it a lot and a lot. And because it's slowly killing your brain cells, and because you're doing it all the time, because it only lasts for 30 seconds, you're going to kill your brain cells real, real fast. Because, like, theoretically, if you do it once a week, it's going to only very slowly kill your brain cells, and you'll be, like, chilling. But no one fucking does it once a week. They do it, like, 10 times in a minute or something. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So, like, it kills your brain cells really fast and you become really, really dumb. I don't know too much of whippets because I wasn't planning on talking about them because I didn't do any research on them. But from my experience, it makes you really dumb really fast, and it is very expensive if you do get addicted to it, and I don't like it. Like, thank God I never got addicted to it because I just didn't like it. I was like, you only get high for 30 seconds, and also, like, the high was just like a very overwhelming feeling for my autistic brain. Thank God I'm autistic because I probably would get addicted because it was like very overstimulating. Like it was too high. Like it was like a numb high, and I like was like you know, and it was too overstimulating for me. So that's why I stopped because like it does feel really good and it does feel really nice, but the overstimulation was a big problem for me. So I didn't like it and I stopped. And thank God I did because the friends that I have that still do it became really, really dumb. And I know a problem is it kills a lot of your brain cells, but I don't know too much of the other downsides, but there's probably a lot of other downsides because it is a pretty heavy drug. So I recommend not doing that one and just stay away from that one, all right? I don't like it. You shouldn't like it. Let's just stay away from that. Okay, buddy? Okay. But yeah, I think those are all the drugs I wanted to talk about, plus a spicy little extra whippet talk. That was unexpected. But yeah, this was like the first video I actually did research on. I think I don't fucking know. I usually just say fuck it, we ball and talk from memory because I'm a stupid motherfucker. But I was like, I want to actually like make sure that like what I'm saying is good, you know, and not misleading people too much. Because like if I just make up shit about my own experience and those don't like align with the actual facts, and I'm like, yeah, do this drug, my experience, it's great, and then you would fucking fall into an addiction and ruin your own life, I would feel really bad. So I actually did a lot of research about this, and I actually like tried for this video, which is very new for me. I usually never try. It's dope. So if you liked this video and if you liked hearing my little rambles about drug addiction and all that fun stuff, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I would appreciate that a lot. And if you don't like, comment, subscribe, and you just watch this video, I appreciate you. Thank you guys for being here. Like, look at you. You're still here. Oh, fuck yeah, bro. Fuck yeah. So yeah, thank you. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.